The Young and the Restless spoilers. The day had begun like any other in Genoa City, quiet on the surface, yet humming beneath with secrets waiting to erupt. Nick Newman had come to the hospital that morning to check on his son, Noah. The family had endured so many crises over the years that visiting a hospital had almost become routine for him, a ritual of worry wrapped in controlled composure. But as he walked down the sterile hallway toward Noah's room, something felt different. The silence was too still, the air too heavy. It was as if fate itself was holding its breath. When he reached the door and pushed it open, the sight before him stopped him cold. Time seemed to slow, reality bending around the impossible image of Noah and Sienna locked in a passionate, desperate kiss. It wasn't a fleeting moment or a mistake of impulse, it was love, raw and unguarded. The world fell away. For a second, Nick couldn't move. His mind refused to process what his eyes were seeing. Sienna Bacall, the woman he knew to be married, the woman whose reputation was tangled with deceit, ambition, and tragedy, was in his son's arms, kissing him with a devotion that defied logic. The shock hit him like lightning. He burst into the room, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. "What the hell is this?" The fury in his tone made both of them freeze. Noah turned, startled but not ashamed, while Sienna's face went pale, her expression flickering between guilt and defiance. Nick's mind raced with disbelief, anger, and the instinctive need to protect his son from something he couldn't even name. "You're kissing a married woman, Noah," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "A married woman, and worse, a dangerous one. What kind of insanity is this?" But before Nick could unleash another word, Noah did something that shattered him even more. He stepped in front of Sienna, shielding her with his body like a soldier defending the last person he'd ever love. The gesture was instinctive, absolute, and it broke every rule Nick had tried to teach him about morality and self-preservation. The confusion in Nick's eyes turned to disbelief. "You're protecting her," he demanded. "After everything you've been through? After what she's done?" But Noah's voice was steady, his eyes burning with conviction. "She hasn't done anything wrong," he said. "Not to me." That sentence landed like a thunderclap. It wasn't just defiance, it was declaration. It was love. Real, forbidden, and dangerous. Nick could barely breathe. He stared at his son, trying to find the boy he had raised somewhere behind the man who now stood before him. All he could see was a stranger, a man willing to throw away everything for a woman who should have been untouchable. The silence that followed was suffocating, heavy with truths neither of them wanted to speak. Finally, Nick broke it, his voice rough with disbelief. "Do you even understand what you're saying? She's married, Noah. She has a husband, a man who won't let this go quietly. Do you want to destroy your life for her?" But Noah didn't flinch. His arm remained around Sienna, his eyes unwavering. "You don't know her," he said softly. "You don't know what she's been through." For Nick, that was the moment the world turned upside down. The father in him wanted to shake Noah, to snap him out of whatever spell Sienna had cast. But another part, the man who had made his own mistakes, who had loved recklessly and lost deeply, recognized something else in Noah's defiance: pain. The kind of pain that only comes from love so real it feels like punishment. As Nick watched them, the puzzle pieces of the past few months began to click into place: Noah's distance, his secrecy, the unexplained tension in his voice whenever Sienna's name came up. It had all been leading to this. Still, there was something else hidden beneath the surface, something darker. Nick's instincts told him that Noah knew more than he was admitting. "Tell me the truth," Nick said, his voice dropping low. "You know something about what happened to you, don't you? You know who's behind it." For a moment, Noah's composure cracked. His jaw tightened, his gaze flickered to Sienna, who gave him a pleading look that Nick didn't miss. That single glance between them said everything: the secrecy, the fear, the guilt. Nick's voice hardened. "Noah, what aren't you telling me?" Noah turned away, running a hand through his hair as if wrestling with something too heavy to contain. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. He had spent weeks avoiding this moment, convincing himself that silence was safer, that protecting Sienna meant protecting himself. But the truth had been burning inside him, and now it was too late to hide it. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled, not with weakness but with release. "I know who set me up," he admitted. "I know who tried to ruin me." Nick's heart stopped. He took a step closer, demanding, "Then tell me." But Noah shook his head. "It doesn't matter anymore," he said. "Because the person I was protecting is the only one I care about now." The words hung in the air like a confession and a sentence all at once. Nick didn't understand until Sienna stepped closer, her eyes glistening with tears that weren't just guilt, they were love. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I tried to stay away, but we couldn't." That was when Noah took her hand and looked his father directly in the eyes. "I love her," he said. "And she loves me. And no matter what you think, we're not letting anyone tear us apart again." Nick felt the floor tilt beneath him. He had expected denial, maybe shame, but not this, not the raw, fearless truth of a love that refused to hide. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He was staring at his son and seeing a mirror of his own youth. Reckless, driven by passion, blinded by the illusion that love could conquer everything. But what came next broke even those illusions. Noah took a deep breath, as though preparing to rip open the final curtain. "There's more," he said quietly. "You deserve to know." Sienna squeezed his hand, her face pale but resolute. "Noah, don't," she whispered, but he continued. "She's pregnant, Dad." The words hit like a bullet. For a second, Nick thought he had misheard. "What?" His voice cracked. "She's what?" Noah's eyes didn't waver. "She's pregnant," he repeated. "And it's mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Nick's mind exploded with disbelief, anger, and fear. He felt the air leave his lungs as the full weight of the revelation sank in. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a catastrophe. A married woman, pregnant with his son's child. The fallout would be devastating, not just for their family, but for everyone connected to them. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Nick said finally, his voice shaking with fury and heartbreak. "Do you understand what this means?" But Noah didn't back down. "I understand that I love her," he said. "And that I'm not walking away from her or this baby." Nick turned to Sienna, disbelief etched across his face. "You let this happen?" he asked. But Sienna's expression was unreadable, a mixture of sorrow and defiance. "It wasn't planned," she said softly. "But it's real. And I won't apologize for loving him." Nick wanted to scream, to rage, to throw something just to break the unbearable stillness of the room. Instead, he stood there, staring at the two of them, his son and the woman who had just shattered his world, and felt something inside him collapse. As the truth spread through the corridors of the hospital, whispers began to ripple across Genoa City. Everyone would have their opinions, some would call it scandal, others would call it destiny. But for Nick, it was something far more personal. It was betrayal and heartbreak tangled in the same breath. He had come to the hospital that morning to protect his son, now he wasn't sure if he could. The man standing before him wasn't the boy he'd raised, he was a man who had made his own choices, for better or worse. And Sienna, the woman at the center of it all, was both victim and villain in a love story that defied reason. As Nick walked out of the hospital room, the echoes of Noah's words followed him like ghosts. "I love her. She's carrying my child." He didn't know which part hurt more, the betrayal of morality or the realization that love, no matter how destructive, could still be sincere. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had changed, but inside Nick, everything had. He knew that what he had seen that day would alter the Newman family forever. Because in Genoa City, every secret eventually comes to light, and this one was about to ignite a fire no one could control. Nick had thought he'd seen every form of chaos a Newman could endure: betrayal, loss, love turned to ruin, but nothing could have prepared him for this. In the days following his discovery at the hospital, the world he thought he knew began to fracture piece by piece. He couldn't stop replaying the moment he saw Noah and Sienna together, the passion, the defiance, and then the devastating revelation that Sienna was carrying his son's child. The air in Genoa City seemed heavier now, as if the city itself was holding its breath for what came next. And what came next, Nick feared, would be war. Because if there was one man who could turn a scandal into a bloodbath, it was Matt Bacall, Sienna's husband, a man as dangerous as he was unpredictable. Nick knew the kind of man Matt was, charming on the outside, but with a core made of jealousy and cruelty, a man who thrived on control and would rather destroy something than lose it. And if he ever found out that Sienna was pregnant with Noah's child, there would be no reasoning with him, no peace, no forgiveness. There would only be rage. Nick had tried to talk sense into Noah, to make him understand that what he was walking into wasn't a love story but a tragedy in the making. Yet the more he pleaded, the more Noah seemed to drift further away from the cautious young man he used to be. There was something fierce in his son's eyes now, something that frightened Nick because he recognized it. The same stubborn fire that had once driven Victor, and in smaller ways, lived inside every Newman. But for Noah, that fire wasn't ambition, it was desperation. He wasn't afraid of Matt or of what might come. He was in love, recklessly, fatally, and he would burn the world if it meant saving Sienna. "I'm ready for this," Noah had told his father, his voice cold, unshaken. "If Matt wants a war, I'll give him one. And I'll end it before he can touch her." Nick had tried to argue, but words meant nothing now. His son had already crossed the point of no return. In another life, maybe Nick could have admired that courage. But this was different. This was a nightmare waiting to unfold. He'd seen what obsession could do to men, how it twisted morality into survival, how it made them believe that killing for love was somehow noble. The thought that Noah could become that kind of man, that he could take a life in the name of love, made Nick's chest tighten with dread. He didn't doubt Matt's capacity for violence either. Matt had a temper that bordered on madness, and Sienna's betrayal would cut deeper than any wound he'd ever known. There was no version of this story that ended cleanly. There would be blood, Nick was sure of it. And then there was Sienna, fragile, beautiful, and broken. Her presence lingered in Nick's thoughts like a haunting melody, a reminder of how easily charm could mask ruin. He had seen women like her before. Women who carried elegance like armor but hid bruises beneath. When she spoke of Matt, her voice trembled between fear and exhaustion. "You don't understand," she had told Nick once, tears barely held back. "Being married to him isn't living, it's surviving. Every day, I wake up wondering which version of him I'll see. The man who smiles or the one who breaks me." It was then Nick began to understand what had drawn Noah to her. It wasn't just love, it was rescue. He wanted to save her from the hell she couldn't escape. And Sienna, for all her flaws, saw Noah not as a boy but as a promise, the one person who could make her feel human again. But love built on rescue always carried a shadow. Nick tried to make sense of it all, but every path led to fear. He could sense that the walls were closing in. The whispers had started, people in town talking about Sienna's absences, about Matt's increasingly erratic behavior. There were rumors that he'd been seen drinking alone at the club, muttering under his breath, asking too many questions about Noah. It was only a matter of time before someone told him the truth, and when that happened, Nick knew what would follow. He could almost hear Victor's voice echoing in his head, warning him of what power and pride could do to men who felt betrayed. Matt Bacall was not just angry, he was dangerous. And if he ever discovered that Sienna was pregnant with another man's child, the consequences would be catastrophic. At night, Nick couldn't sleep. He kept imagining the confrontation that would inevitably come, Matt storming into the Newman ranch, fury in his eyes, Noah standing his ground with that blind, fearless conviction, Sienna caught between them. He saw the ending before it even began, shouting, violence, tragedy. Yet no matter what he said, Noah refused to listen. "You think I don't know who Matt is?" Noah had said. "I know exactly what he's capable of. That's why I have to end this before he does." Nick felt the chill in his son's words. "End this?" he had asked. "What are you saying?" And Noah's reply was so calm it terrified him. "I'll kill him if I have to." That sentence had replayed in Nick's mind ever since, not just as fear, but as prophecy. Noah was no longer thinking like the son he knew, he was thinking like a man pushed to the edge. Sienna's pregnancy had changed everything. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival, hers, his, and now the life they had created together. Noah had already decided that Matt could not be part of that world. He spoke of protecting Sienna as if it were a mission, as if fate had chosen him for it. "He's not taking her from me," he said. "He's not taking our child." Nick tried to reason with him, to tell him that violence would only destroy him, but Noah's eyes were already distant, fixed on a future where he and Sienna were free. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "She's been living in a prison. I'm not letting him lock her in again." For Sienna, the walls of that prison were closing faster than she could breathe. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched, expecting Matt's name to appear. She knew he was watching her, he always had been. Even when he wasn't in the room, she could feel him. The control, the suspicion, the silent cruelty that came with every smile. Her marriage had been a performance for years, one she endured out of fear and obligation. But now, with Noah, she had glimpsed something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The idea of raising a child with him felt impossible, reckless, and yet it was the first dream she had dared to believe in. Still, she couldn't shake the dread that lingered like smoke. She knew Matt's rage, she had seen it, felt it, survived it. And if he ever found out about the pregnancy, it wouldn't just be Noah in danger. It would be her. Nick's worry deepened with each passing day. He tried to warn Victor, hoping his father's influence might rein in the growing chaos, but even Victor seemed uncertain. "You can't stop what's already in motion," Victor said gravely. "You can only decide who survives it." The words offered no comfort, only truth. And so Nick found himself trapped between the instinct to protect his son and the knowledge that love had already made Noah unstoppable. He watched helplessly as his son began to prepare for something inevitable, late-night phone calls, cryptic messages, meetings he wouldn't explain. It was clear now that Noah wasn't waiting for Matt to attack. He was planning his own move. Matt, on the other hand, was unraveling. His charm had curdled into suspicion, his voice sharp with bitterness whenever Sienna's name came up. Friends began to avoid him, even his business partners whispered about his erratic behavior. He had started drinking again, the kind of drinking that made him dangerous, silent, brooding, waiting. And then came the rumors that he had hired someone to follow Sienna, that he was gathering information about where she went and who she met. When Nick heard that, the fear in him became panic. He tried to find Noah before Matt did, but it was already too late. One night, as the rain lashed against the windows of the Genoa City Athletic Club, Matt finally got the confirmation he'd been waiting for. A single photograph, blurry but unmistakable, Sienna, standing close to Noah, her hand resting protectively on her abdomen. That was all it took. The fury that consumed him was beyond reason. Glass shattered in his hand, blood mingling with whiskey as he muttered to himself, "She's carrying his child." In that moment, something in Matt broke, not just his heart, but his sanity. Back at the Newman home, Nick sensed the shift in the air before the call even came. When his phone finally rang, he didn't have to look at the screen to know what it meant. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. Noah, fearless and in love, was walking straight into danger, and Matt, wounded and vengeful, was ready to kill. And in the center of it all was Sienna, the woman whose heart had become the battlefield between them. Nick didn't know if love or hatred would win this war, but he knew one thing for certain: someone wouldn't make it out alive.